Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself. And if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So, on that note, let's dive right in. With these talks, I'm already recording it because
Oh,
I'm like,
cool.
let's just see what happens. And
Yeah.
we dive right in. But since I don't know you, this is our first time ever talking. Would you be open to just sharing a little bit about you, where you are, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Martina Biljan, pronounced technically Billion. And I'm in London, Ontario, Canada. So Little London, we call it, but I actually have lived in Big London as well. So it's kind of, I always have to clarify, like Little London.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I do, of course, now, obviously with COVID and everything, I've transitioned to pretty much absolutely everything virtually online. So that's coaching in terms of wellness coaching, but mostly what I've transitioned into is more of like a soul coaching. So connecting the mind, body, and spirit, but in a really digestible way for like what I call like modern spirituality or modern woo woo.
That
And
got me curious too when you had mentioned modern spirituality. So I'm going to ask you about that. But
yeah. But mostly like I teach yoga, I teach meditation, mindfulness, and I have a background in holistic nutrition as well. So what I've done is basically like marry all those things and kind of figure out or like help people figure out what's out of whack and out of like alignment, and then we kind of fill in the holes and give like tips and tools for that specific person, to kind of determine how to feel the best in your body and in yourself and in your basically your soul, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. And I love that you made that distinction about the Londons too. So I lived in Toronto for 5 years. I feel like we may have touched on this when we were messaging. And
Yeah.
it's funny because when you're there, people are like, oh, I'm going to, Stratford for the weekend, or oh, I'm going to London for the weekend. And not being from Ontario, you're always kind of like, which one? Like, where are you going?
Yes,
Because if you live in
totally.
Vancouver, you wouldn't casually say I'm going to London and mean Ontario.
100%.
So I think it's kind of funny. I mean, context creates meaning, but I always just found it really interesting how people would throw it around so casually. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, you mean London, Ontario? Like, that's not, no
Yeah.
offense, but that's not as exciting. Like,
Yes. It's not.
and I never even ventured there. I think, where did I end up going? I went to Cambridge for a car show.
Okay, cool.
Not as cute as you'd think it would be by its name. Very industrial.
Yes.
I went out to this is still kind of, I think, GTA, but like Oakville to go horseback
Yeah.
riding. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend from school who lived out there. So I would take the train out and meet her, and then we'd go
Mm.
ride her horse, who's now out here with her in
Oh,
BC.
cool.
That's pretty
That's
neat
amazing.
years later. Um, yeah, we met in line. I feel like this is a very like Toronto University thing to have happen. We met in line at a club, and like for an all ages club night in first year, and I had my barn coat on because it was like my thinnest insulated coat, so it just made
Right.
sense, right? And so she saw that it had horses and was like, oh, we must be friends. And now
Yes.
here we are over a decade later, still friends, and now both living on the West Coast. So it's kind of funny. But
Oh, that's a great story. That's how like amazing friendships start a lot of the time with somebody like kind of
random
going out of
encounters.
like, yeah, out of their comfort zone and just being like, hey, you know.
Yep, totally. And of course, now my cat's going to continue to make noise. We're just going to go with it.
I can't hear, so
It's
don't
fine.
worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious about this modern spirituality.
Mm.
Something I've been noticing, and like I'm big in the whole spiritual awakening level too, it feels like right now. It's like it's happening
Yeah.
again and like amplified, and sometimes I hate it. But with that, I've been doing a lot of looking into things and just talking about it and whatever. And what I've come to notice is a lot of people use these words in very different ways.
Mm.
And I've also been curious where I see people maybe using words, and which is fine, like we can define our own terms, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's been interesting to see where words have really shifted from like their historical roots as well. So I'm curious what modern spirituality like means for you, or what you meant by that when you wrote it down. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think you kind of, put a little bit of context into it right there is just your own terms, like putting things into your own terms, because I mean, life has changed from thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, right? We have so many more tools like at our fingertips, literally, technologically, and all the advancements in just like life. And so I think that what spirituality has evolved, or the evolution of it, and I don't want to get all religious because I'm not religious and I never grew up religious, so I don't want to speak to that too much. But like,
Whatever comes up, go for it. And
yeah,
that's my cat if you
that's
sliding
okay.
around. Yeah.
Right. But like you have to shift with the times, and because as we become more vocal and free to speak how we want to speak and show up how we want to show up, and different careers and jobs and roles as humans, I think that the spirituality needs to shift as well. And sometimes it's not being married so hard fast to how we did things thousands years ago. And I always say, like, cleaning can be spiritual. Going for a run can be a spiritual experience. Driving in your car can be a spiritual experience. You can have things hit you at any time. It doesn't have to be necessarily with, the sun, moon, and stars align, and incense, and all the crystals in the corners of your room in a perfect, grid. And
Feel targeted right now. No, I'm kidding.
no. I have them too. Trust me, I
Yeah.
have them all over. But I think like that's where people get caught up, and they're less likely to actually even go there when they're too scared to even start, because I'm like, am I doing it right? Oh my gosh, I don't want to, like, I know how powerful this tool could be. So what if I mess it up? What if I, conjure some like dark spirit, because I put the wrong crystal in the wrong corner of my room? And I know that
Oh, I
because
have stories for you.
oh, okay. I love stories like this.
Yeah.
But I know that stopped me before, and like I had this deck that was given to me, this tarot deck, and I was so petrified of even opening it up until
Mhm.
someone just said, have fun with it. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? I can have fun. They're like, you're not gonna, like, nothing bad's gonna happen if you just, respect it, or like put the right intention behind it. And I think that was like a huge awakening for me, or eye-opening for me, to be like, oh, I can like try, and like
Mhm.
some things I'm gonna resonate with, some things I'm absolutely not going to, so
Totally.
I think that's where like finding that like niche for you, and not everyone's gonna align with all the things, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's where
Yeah.
that came
Oh my God, seriously, cat. No, that I wish you could see him right now. He's like down in the corner, like looking up wide-eyed, and his ears are back, and he's just like going nuts.
well, maybe there's something there.
I don't think so. And I say that fairly confidently because like
Yeah,
we've had that happen. Um,
yes, that's why I'm asking. Legit.
yeah, so it's that all touches so spot on with actually like what I have gone through over the last like
Oh,
3 to 4 months, I'd say. I think it was back in like May, June when this all started. Maybe it's only 3 months. Yeah, 3 months.
nice.
Um, yeah, so I had started at the beginning of COVID, learning to go into my Akashic records.
Oh, so good.
And I did it with a book, which I'm now using again, but I did it with a book. And before I continue, I tend to be a little bit vulgar and use profanities. Do you mind that?
No, please.
So in terms of like from where I was at currently to like where I went with like going Akashic Records,
Mhm.
it was like balls deep first push. Like it was just probably too much, but it's clearly what I needed to get going on
Yeah.
this next part of my journey. I used to be like at the park every day, meditating for an hour, cleansing the
Mhm.
crystals, da 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 da. And then that all fell off. And there's been a lot of more recent shifts in my life that I won't fully get into because I'm kind of
Mhm.
like in them right now,
Totally.
that are really showing me where it's like, dude, you need to just let life be easy. But
Mm.
so that all kind of comes together. But anyway, so I started going in and I'd be in there and I was talking to a friend, I was messaging her, and the way I described it was like, I hear a lot of conversation, but what it actually sounded like was static. And it's difficult because like you're interpreting energy really, right? Like you're
Yeah.
reading energy that's coming through and you read it in different ways for different people. So when I relay to someone, I hear a bunch of people talking. Like to them, that might sound like, oh, like your guides are all talking at once, like they're giving you a lot of messages at once. So like it's hard to interpret it in like a human mind kind of thing.
And in English and like
Yeah, which I've had experiences with not English coming through too, and that's been
Mhm.
interesting. But so
Cool.
it was about a month or two after that, like in June, I decided to do a level 1 course. And so it was like live, virtually, but live.
Mhm.
And I relayed that there was this static and all these things. And the person facilitating had, well, two of them had their records open to help us as we move through. And very definitively was just like, that's not the records like that I was hearing the vibration. They're like, you have lower vibrational energies attached to you and you need to protect yourself right now. So
Oh.
yes, this was Vivian's closet. So when you talk about being at that point of wanting to start and like being terrified and not knowing where to go, like that was 100% me. Because the first thought with that is like, well, I don't know how to do this. Like,
Yes.
how am I supposed to protect myself when I don't even know? It's like, I joked on another episode about this actually. I was like, I never used protection before. Why start now? So like, I was like,
What
I
does
had
that even
no,
mean? Yeah.
yeah, and I really liked the term lower vibrational energies. And then I got connected with someone who was willing to help me, and they're like, yeah, that's ghosts and spirits. And I was like, no, 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 like, not that word, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so she came to help me and like put up wards in my home and like cleansed it like in a way that worked for her, just to give me like a groundwork kind of thing. Um, and we found out that there was Vivian, who was a spirit who had been with me since Salem, basically, like
Wow.
many, many lives, but she'd never reincarnated since then. She held a grudge, so we like talked it out. And then there was a ghost, a little boy named Joshua, who had been friends with my cat. And he just referred to me as the nice lady that he lived with, and he gave me a hug and on he went.
Oh.
But shortly thereafter, I was noticing some some things at night. I would be trying to fall asleep and I'd feel like something was like tapping my leg. So it was almost like how like I don't have kids, but like, you know, when you watch
Yeah.
movies and the parents are like almost awake and the kids like are like, are you awake yet? Like that.
Yeah.
It felt like that. It felt like that's what was happening. But then like one night, it was more into the morning, like early, early morning. And I actually heard like a click beside my head and it jolted me awake. And I saw like a shadow beside the bed and then it like went away. And I have like chills talking
I
about
know, me too.
it. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like that
Yeah.
was kind of my thought. And I've been ignoring it because I think part of me too was like scared to acknowledge it fully. So like if I
Mhm.
ignore it, y'all leave me
Not there.
alone. It's
Yeah.
fine. But also I was like, I need to clearly do something. So that friend came back and it ended up that there had been a gate opened in the corner of my bedroom, or it was opening.
Like a portal kind of.
Yeah, which is also where my cat had been sitting. So he was actually like keeping it closed
Yeah.
and protecting me, because my friend had been doing it. And then later that night, I uttered my cat's former name, like from before I got him. And my
Mhm.
friend was like, wait, what did you say? And I repeated it. And she's like, that's the name that the thing was using when it was talking to me. Yeah. So like just weird, just very weird. So that's been my life. And so a big part of that has been exactly what you're kind of talking about, is like what works for me. Cause like the
Yeah.
way my friend cleansed and protected my house, and for the first bit, it was very ritualistic. Like I would go around with
Mhm.
a bell every freaking day and like need
Yes.
to like reinforce these things every day. And until recently, I had to like state every night before bed, like I am not available for contact and like da da da. And it became almost like OCD, right? Like if I
Yeah.
don't do this, this thing's gonna happen. As opposed to now I'm getting, well, I think currently I'm just like apathetic. And I was like, do whatever you want. I don't fucking care. And so they just like leave me alone. um,
Well,
but
that's good. Like, you could sleep tonight.
something, yeah. But it's moved into more of, I guess, feeling what makes sense as I go. And with that, I think it's important, like kind of, I think what you were touching on, or how I kind of heard it, was like giving yourself permission to explore the different
Yes.
modalities and just see what makes sense. Like, I mean, I use candles, but like, crystals do click for me, but it's not like I'm working with them every single day, like, things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think some of that, and I know I went through something similar with that, where it was my meditation practice and I became so resentful of it. Like, I was pissed that I had to do it, and I'm sitting there like pissed off in my meditation, like, and I'm trying to fit it in, because originally the way I had learned to meditate, which I like, I can't say enough good things about, was the Vedic meditation, the TM, transcendental meditation, and it's twice a day, 20 minutes. And like, I don't know, the second one like really got to me. Like, it would really piss me off. And I'm like, I'm failing because I'm not doing it. And
Mm.
I'm not doing it right and at the right time and for the amount of time I'm supposed to. And so I just, like, it totally fell off. And for like 2 years, I just didn't meditate because I was like not doing it right. Right. So that resentment that builds around that practice can go the complete opposite way that it's supposed to. And this is supposed to be like open, and again, like you said, like exploration, and
Mhm.
like the permission to fall off track and then get back on when you want to. And it's more about flowing and like ease, and like it's supposed to be, fun and enjoyable. And obviously, like, the shadow work part of it's not always fun, but like
Yeah.
these tools are there just to be a guide and almost like a conduit. So
Mhm.
whichever one you choose in that day should be fine. And yes, I do see the benefit of like discipline and like, consistency. But if you're starting to resent it, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that feels yuck, right? It feels so yuck, and then it doesn't feel right in your body, and
Mhm.
then you probably are attracting the wrong things, and that's when like your vibration is lowered, and it's like, well, I will attach to you. What's
Yep.
this? Like, yeah,
Yeah, or just like not protected or grounded at all. My friend
yeah,
referred to it as like I was hovering on like the lower rung of the ladder. So I was
yeah,
just super vulnerable. Whereas now
totally.
I think I'm fairly well connected both
Mm-hmm.
ways. Like I can like have you ever done, probably because you've done the meditation and stuff, but like the meditation where you visualize yourself as like a tree like rooting into the ground kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
So when this all first started, I was told like you need to ground. And I tried to do that and I couldn't even visualize it. It's like I couldn't
Mm,
visualize energy moving in whatever way that is, because I'm not typically a very visual person when it comes to that kind of thing. Like my third
yeah,
eye is not my strong suit.
right,
But I
yeah,
couldn't even feel it moving below like my hips. It was like just stuck. And
right.
and I now it's like give me 2 minutes and I can like see the whole thing and off I go.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, just like things like that were not happening. So I was just like vulnerable, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It's like finding out, okay, some people are visual learners, some people like need the auditory, like some people need to like touch and feel and like experience that like the sensory experience, right? And
Mhm.
so it's almost like in knowing more about yourself, your empowerment, because you become more empowered in your choices of what you're going to do and how you're going to approach your spiritual practice,
Mhm.
versus like just blindly following some quote unquote guru, right? Like, it'd be like, well, they did this, so
Mhm.
or like, you know I have to do steps 1 to 24, and therefore I will be enlightened.
If only it were that easy.
Right.
Right? People have like referred me to books too, and I buy the book. And not that I have a ton of them, but I'm like,
Yeah,
like it's
doesn't feel right.
no. And it
Yeah.
is, it's like figuring out what makes sense. And I think a big shift for me, like when you talk about like the things you don't want attaching to, which I think is very important.
Mhm.
And also I think it's been important for me to like start to see these things as more neutral. And like the next time that I felt something in my home, like I felt its sadness. Like it wasn't like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. I was just like, oh, like you're looking for something that you already have. Like,
Yeah.
and like just recognizing that part. It's like we're both
Hmm.
soul in like a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's been really important just for me to feel safe to start to explore too.
Hmm.
Um And maybe that's similar, like if we want to loop it back, I don't know, to like, because I know you're big into like yoga and that kind of thing. And I feel like that's probably also really important in that realm, is just that, it's not, oh, this is going to be too hard, or oh, I can't do that, or this. It's like
Mhm.
just feel safe trying and like see
Yeah,
what happens and what makes sense for you right now.
of course. And of course, like along with that, you have to be like open to trying different things versus like a little bit more stuck. I call it like, I
Mhm.
would say married. It's like married to that idea, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, and I like, and I just, sorry to bring it back to the yoga. Like I had an experience where, I did a couple of yoga teacher trainings, and one of the things, well, a lot of part of the practice is like you wake up, you do your breath work, you do your meditation, you do your practice, and it's like this way at like 4 a.m. because that's an auspicious time. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're waking up early to do this before you start your day. And again, it was one of those things, and maybe this is like coming out as like, I'm clearly like a recovering perfectionist, but it's like, if I didn't do those things, I felt like I was not a yoga teacher or not a yogi. And I was like failing at that. And I'm like, how can I teach if I'm not doing it? So I just didn't even teach for 6 months after my first yoga teacher
Wow.
training because I was like so nervous of doing it wrong. Right. And
Mhm.
because of course, there's so much power behind all of these practices that you don't want to invoke something, you know, dark or whatever in somebody else that isn't ready for it. So having that information, I was so petrified. But then, so I was talking to one of my mentors, and she was saying, because I was like, oh my gosh, you wake up and you do this and this and this and this in the morning before you teach. And she's like, no. And I was like, what? She's like, no, I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband.
Yep.
Like, I've got shit to do. Like, I don't have time for that at 4 a.m. and like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but you're a yoga teacher, right? And she's like, no. So she's gone to India and all these things and spent time in ashrams. And she said, the people in India, they don't do that whole like ashram lifestyle until they're retired. Like they've been
Oh,
humans before that. And I was like, oh my God,
it's
like
so
what a
funny.
sigh of relief. I was like, I
Yeah.
legit thought that I had to do all of these steps in this way, in this order, before I even start my day, before I even start work, before I even talk to anybody, and it was such a like relief in knowing that I can like stray from,
Mhm.
again, and that's why I call it modern spirituality, because it's like how it was thousands and thousands of years ago or whatever. And to know that these people do it like in retirement when they actually have the time to like focus on that,
Yeah.
he said like they've served their community, they've worked, regular jobs. I'm like, oh, you can be human and spiritual at the same time, right? Like
Yep.
you're not just floating in this world up here all of the time, because yeah, you got
Well,
to
it's
pay your taxes.
exhausting too.
Oh my
That's how I was
God.
feeling with this house stuff. And, for a
100%.
while I needed to do it more ritualistically, but I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, it's
Exactly.
just not. And I was so tired. Like,
Hmm.
all I wanted was to just sleep through the night and not be like scared to try to do it. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, and now thankfully, like it's that part at least has gotten better, but yeah, it is
Hmm.
exhausting and it's I think in terms of any wellness type practice, like
Hmm.
it needs to be sustainable for you. Like it's probably like people always say it's better to do like 5 minutes a day than like nothing and then like once a month or whatever.
Yeah, like once a month for 3 hours or something.
Yeah. So like figuring out the only thing I do that way is like hiking tends to be
Yeah.
like I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go on one hike this year. It's gotta be the hardest one. And I'm gonna be crying on top of the mountain after 5 hours and like not
Yeah.
able to move for 6 days. And normally how I do that. It's
Yeah.
not
Well,
the
you got
best
the six
way.
days to like come off of that, chill, get like into the bath or something
It's like,
like
oh, I need a
delicious.
pedicure after this. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But that's like the human side of it, right? That's like, oh, okay, like I can be both. I can sit here and meditate if I want, and like you said, go get a pedicure.
Yeah.
Like just be like, we are meant to experience both ends of it, like
Hmm.
in a lifetime where, you can't, again, like, oh, and which I legit thought, like, to be a successful spiritual person, quote unquote, you have to like float up here and be like ethereal and like flowy and like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I had this idea of it, and that's so not what it is. And I think that's where I hope that people
Hmm.
don't get deterred from trying things because they think
Yeah.
people need to be a certain way or look a certain way or, do steps 1 to 52. Like, again, like I said, just just try what feels good, you know, what you're drawn to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even when you were talking about, you know, going around your house and like using the bell and that kind of thing. Like, I've never been drawn to that, but I know that, like, I know I'm open to seeing to the spiritual world, but I'm so petrified of
Yep.
seeing one that I'm like, I've communicated to them. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'll like even say that in that
My
bed.
friend's response to me, like, no, that was legitimately me because she sees things. So like
Mm-hmm.
that day that she was here, I was like, can you be here while I go into my records now that we've like cleaned the house and done the thing? Because that's where this was happening. It's like, can you
Mm-hmm.
sit here and like see what happens? So she sat there to try and help like hold back anything.
Yeah.
Miss Vivian, now I'm getting my guidance here. I
Cool.
I get the same physical sensation every time. It's like,
That's very cool.
Vivian came up and screamed in her face. And it was interesting because, well, there's many reasons this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people listening to these recent recordings that I've been doing are like, who are you? And it's like, it's fine. You don't need to know.
Yeah.
But when she first got here, she had referenced like the left side a lot. And I was like, that doesn't resonate for me. Like most things for me are happening on the right side. Like, I don't know what that's about. Like, let's see what happens. And when this happened, Vivian came up to her left side and like screamed in her face. So like she
Wow.
sees things, and like that was her first experience. And maybe I'll have to get her on here to talk more about this at some point. But
Yeah.
was like waking up and seeing a bunch of things around. When I was younger, I saw things. As you're taking me through your home now.
Sorry, my doorbell just rang. So
That's
just
okay.
if my partner took our dog for a walk while this is happening, so I just opened the
Oh,
door for him in case.
that's
Sorry.
That's okay. And it, like, yeah, when I was younger, I saw things. But recently, that has not been the case except for one instance. And my friend's response was like, well, sometimes you don't have a choice. So,
Mm.
yeah, I didn't like that either. It hasn't happened again for me. But what I did find really, really cool, in a slightly at first discomforting way, was that I started to be given opportunities in my sleep to work through my approach to energies when they would come visit me.
Mm.
And seriously, dude, now my cat's tearing up a receipt that he found. Um, but the really neat thing was I would like journal. So something I do like to do, this is like you're saying, like, you don't necessarily have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but then it's like, okay, what does feel right for me
Yeah.
during the day? I am not someone to meditate right before bed, especially with all this stuff. My
Yeah.
imagination is way too good. And like closing my eyes in a dark room at night in my house is not a comforting feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to journal first thing in the morning if I can. And I
Mm-hmm.
would journal the days after these dreams happened or experiences happened. And I'd have like a very clear message come through. And a lot of what it was like, someone in my spirit corner was presenting me an opportunity to practice. And so
Oh,
that was really interesting. So like the
that's so
dream
interesting.
thing might have freaked me out, but then the next morning I was like, oh, that was just you. Like, okay. So I feel to an extent, as much as my friend said, kind of like sometimes you don't get a choice,
Yeah.
I also feel that energy presents itself on the timeline and in the ways that we're ready to experience
Mm-hmm.
it. Like we might not necessarily know that as it's happening. Like the Vivian thing totally freaked me out. But at the same time, like I'm here and I'm okay. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like I was ready. I just also needed that push to get to whatever my next level was. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense.
That's very cool. Yeah. I never thought of exploring it in like a dreamlike state or like,
Mm-hmm.
that's very interesting. And I know like a lot of messages do come through in dreams. And when people talk about them, I'm like, oh, tell me more, because I know there's like something there for us to learn. And sometimes it's just the show you watched the night before, you know what I mean? But that's like leading influence into
Yeah.
it. But a lot of the time there is so much messaging and like exploration that's available to us through
Mm-hmm.
that state, because you're in a totally different state, like consciously, right? So
Yep.
it's very cool.
The veil is thin,
Hmm.
which I don't really like.
Well, that's why they
But
say 4 a.m., because 4 a.m. is like one of the thinnest veils and like the auspicious time, and so that's why
Mhm.
they want you to practice at a time. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I've been sleeping through that time recently, which I'm very
That's
excited about.
good. Yes.
Yeah. So the one that I had, I feel like you'll find this interesting,
Yeah.
was an experience where I had a visitor, but it was kind of just like an energy ball, like above me, kind of, because I was sleeping. But all I remember at the time within my dream, knowing that this was real. I was like, this isn't a dream. Like, this is a legitimate experience.
Mm-hmm.
And all that happened was I named it. Like, I knew this energy's name and was like, not now. And it went away.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking to myself, you need to remember that name. Like, you need to remember that name.
Yeah.
And all I could remember, you might find this part fascinating, we'll see if it clicks, was the next morning, all I could remember when I woke up was it started with a G and it was 4 letters.
Huh.
So I did some journaling the next day and I did a card pull from my deck. And the
Yeah.
card that I pulled is labeled Maya, which is like the grandmother of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then it happened again. Like something similar happened another time in my dream. And I had the same feeling. I was like, I feel like it's the same energy visiting me again. So I did a journal, I did a card pull, same card.
No way. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And like a friend I'd been talking to who does more like shamanic practices,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't know. I didn't know this about them until we got talking. I was like, oh, interesting.
Cool. I
And
love
asked me like, well, do you think it was Gaia? And I was like, I don't, this was like the next day. I was like, I honestly don't remember the name, but then these things all happen. And I was like, okay, maybe it was like,
that. Yes.
yeah. So that was
You
pretty
never
cool. But
know.
like when I was younger, I used to like study in my dreams, like, cause I have kind of a minimally photographic memory. So I could
Mm-hmm.
like picture the page and like zoom in and like reread it when I was like sleeping. So I think it makes sense for me that I experience and practice in my dreams. It's just not something I had thought of happening. Cause like, that's not the experience I've heard from other people.
Of course.
But
I'm sure there's other people out there that do it. It's just
oh,
in like chatting about it and like like doing this, right? That you kind of figure that stuff out. So it's kind of
mhm.
interesting. Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. But like, what's your experience with that? And I guess now we're going kind of supernatural, but like, why not? It's fun. What's your experience
Yeah.
with that been so far?
So yeah.
If you're open
As
to
a
sharing.
kid, I always had this like, and it's so interesting because now when I think about it and the way that we speak to children, and I don't have children myself, so I can't really speak from experience in sense in that terms, but
Mhm.
I always had this like imaginary friend named Lisa. And she was like so like I can even still picture her how she looks. You know, like she had these like overalls, this purple shirt,
Wow.
these like two like what do you call them, like pigtails,
Yep.
but they were like, you know, she's a person of color, and so they were like beautiful puffy like curls to the side. And I remember her like that was my friend. And like my parents, like I told them about I'm lucky enough that they didn't like, you know, say, oh, that's just your imaginary friend. They just kind of like, oh, okay, you know,
Yeah.
like they just encouraged that in that kind of sense. But like to me that was so normal,
Mm.
like to speak to Lisa, you know, in terms of that stuff. But I did have an experience, and so I think like as like, you know, I got busy in life and like I just that was a thing. And we had a cat actually when I was younger. And this sounds so weird, but like we had such a strong bond. Like
Mhm.
he saved my brother's life. My
This
brother was
is
like
not
bleeding.
weird to me, just
I
like,
know, I know. It's true. Yeah. My brother was like bleeding to death in the bathroom and he like went to like wake my parents up. Yeah. And got them and like literally brought my parents to like
jeez.
a dog usually typically does that, but not a cat, you know? And so, but the bond my cat and I had was so strong. And I remember looking at him and I was like, you're an old man. Like I can picture your face as an old
Mhm.
man in a sense.
Mhm.
And like I just knew him. Like I legit knew him. And I don't know if I was like knowing him as like a female or as he was like a father figure or like a brother, you know what I mean? Like something like that. But our connection was like insanely strong. And like I think just, you know, it was never really encouraged in terms of like, let's explore this more. It was just, okay, yes, that's cool, blah, blah, blah. Like that's it. And then you just, you know, life happens and then you go away from it. And the most recent experience I could say is I was with someone before my current partner,
Mhm.
and his mother had died, and I'd never met her or anything like that, but she apparently was a very, very strong woman and like prevented her kids from doing a lot of things. Like she kind of came in between them.
Right.
She was like a very strong personality in terms of that way,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you call that, like controlling, I guess. Yeah,
Mhm.
quite controlling. And so I remember I was sleeping in my house alone, and like nobody was there, and this energy came, and it was like pressing on my chest to the point where I physically couldn't move.
Yeah.
And I knew it was her. Like I just
Ooh.
knew.
Yeah.
I never saw her, but like I lived in a very old home at the time, and it was like over 100, 200 years old or something like that. Like it was quite old.
Yeah.
Not 200, but 100 years old. And I was just like being pushed down. It felt like someone was pushing me down. And my physical body, like I could not move it. And I had to say, like, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome here. You need to go away. And it felt like she was like just clamping me down with the covers almost or
Oh my
something.
God.
It was petrifying, like absolutely petrifying. And I'd like cleansed the house before that and all that stuff, but I knew she just didn't want like anybody with her son in a sense. Like it was
Mhm.
very evident. And I mean, I don't know their relationship in terms of like how that kind of panned out or anything like that,
Right.
but it was so real. And the fact that I physically couldn't move
Yeah.
was really messed up. And I was like, I know this is not a dream. This is not a dream. And at the time, like I hadn't really like practiced that part of
Mhm.
my spiritual practice because I said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And in moving into that old house, like I knew, I was like, there's for sure spirits in here. Like,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I'm ready to see them. And I even said to them, like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I like ran around the home. But and like I had friends that said there's an old man there, but he never bothered me. There was like apparently an old cat there, and the cat never bothered me.
Yeah.
I had a dog there at the time. It was totally fine. But it was that experience that was like, okay, I need to
Yeah.
either like learn how to protect my energy, protect my space,
Mhm.
or like, and then I got, of course, I got friends who came in and like cleansed and stuff some more. But it was very, I just like, you have a knowing of like,
Mhm.
exactly like you said, like, I know this energy, I know this.
Yeah.
And it was very dark. It was very, very dark. So that was kind of scary. And I think after that, I like really closed myself off because I was so freaked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't blame you.
Mhm.
Because I would too. I know as a kid I had more experiences. Things were more visual. Like a kid up until
Mhm.
like teenager,
Yeah.
of seeing and sensing things within my home. But I definitely had one home where I'm pretty sure we had a trickster. And
Mm,
it was also around the time my parents were divorcing. So like that would make sense.
yeah.
But I also remember that there was a man at the end of my bed and he kept me safe.
Wow.
And more recently, I saw this again and I've realized that that's my guide.
Yeah.
Like he apparently always is at the end of my bed.
That's amazing.
So that was really interesting. But when you talk about your cat, like I totally get that. And I feel like it'd be really interesting to look into that more. Cause like
Yeah.
with my guy who's sleeping beside me, um, he's had probably more, if at least the same amount of intuitive readings done as I have. Like, because I
Yeah.
got him help. um,
Amazing.
and we have kind of figured out, well, he obviously probably knew already, but that we have been connected like through
Mhm.
many lives. And he was here now to help me kind of like reach the next level. But the interesting thing too was I noticed the first time I connected with my guide, I noticed the syntax. And because I just pick up on that, and I was like, you sound like my cat. And then I realized like it's because he has been talking to my cat, trying to get through to me because I
Okay.
wasn't open to it. So like
Yeah.
things like that. But um yeah, like my cat definitely is like the grandpa type. I was like, I feel like he's been that to me. But I
Yes.
think it's also possible that my friend said actually, people believe different things about this, but
Mhm.
my friend said that she got the sense almost that I'd been his cat before,
Maybe.
which is interesting. Some people feel that you can't incarnate that way, like that you don't
Oh.
um come through as an animal and then as a person, and like it doesn't, but other
Oh,
people are
really?
like it's a free for all. So I haven't
Yeah.
really looked into that. I
Mhm.
just go based on what feels right, and like that
Exactly.
makes sense. And like more recently I actually got the overwhelming feeling. It came through as like a fear, but it came through as like, how am I supposed to find you? Because I got the feeling that in our next incarnation, together at least, we will both be human and we're meant to be partners.
Oh, cool.
So like, just, yeah. So like, none of that sounds crazy to me because it's like my life. And oh, he came to
Yeah,
say hi.
of course.
He knows we're talking about him. Are you ready,
Yeah.
bud? Come on up.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah, this is Christoph.
Oh, he's so cute.
Yeah. So it totally makes sense to me. And like, I get the thought of like, normally only dogs do that, because I describe Christoph that way all the time. It's like he acts like a dog,
Yeah.
but he's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's a whole lot. I know about living in old houses too. It doesn't happen here as often, but when I lived in Toronto, I lived in like an old house in the annex, and
Yeah.
I swear I did not sleep. Like I was terrified all the time.
Yeah. I really wanted the characteristics of an old house. And like I fully knew going in, I was like, okay, like I'm for sure gonna like there's gotta be spirits. Like you can't avoid it. Like, you know what I mean? It's an older home. Um, and of course it's been like, you know, transitioned into different rooms and things like that, right? But I really like I think before I even like brought my furniture in, I was like bringing my friends. I'm like, okay, please cleanse, please cleanse. Just even the energy from the person before or whatever, right? Like that kind of thing. And oddly enough, we just moved in here in December and I haven't even cleansed this house, but it feels really good. Like which I will cleanse. Like I kind of sort of cleanse, but I haven't brought like, I have like a shamanic friend who like does like shamanic readings and things. And she like brings her drum around and her bells and her, all the things. Right. And she'll tell us like, oh, there's like this person here or this here, or like, yeah. And even like we lived in a very like not old condo previously, and there was still stuff there. Like there were still people, and we traveled a lot. And she's like, "Oh, you brought this like general back from like Ireland with you." I was like, "Oh,
What?
like, really cool." Yeah, she's
That
like,
is
"Oh, he's like
wild.
leaving you messages," because she like there's coins all over our home, and they happened to be like different ones, but they weren't necessarily from like the UK. They were just like different coins that weren't Canadian. She's like, "Yeah, he's trying to tell you a message that like he's here with you." And she's like, "Did you go to a castle?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You brought him back with you." I was like, okay. So she had to like release him and like, yeah, it's cool. Very
That is
interesting.
wild. See, I haven't quite gone that far, but honestly, the times that I have found out there was something here, I definitely start to panic. Like there's still that reaction of like, I don't want to know. Like, can we just not do this?
I think my reaction is like, okay, we got to get people in here. Let's get the sage. Let's get this. Let's get that. Like,
Yeah. I recommend a bell if you're looking
yeah.
to start on your own. I don't use it anymore because actually it raises my vibration too fast. To the point though that I actually get nauseous. Like I can't physically use it anymore. So
have you ever like worked past the nausea, or is it like that terrible?
No, it got worse. Like when I tried, it got worse. Yeah, like it was was it new moon, I think? I decided to do like a cleansing thing.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go around and use my like Florida water or whatever that stuff's called, and like the doorways, because that closet has had some activity. So I was like gonna work on that and go around with my belts, like invite in the good energy. And I pushed through.
Yeah.
And by the end, I honestly was like so sick. Like I almost threw up. So I'm just like, nope. And it happens now too. Like I just like really, really fast. So maybe that's something that like with practice, it won't be as severe, but I haven't gone back to using the bell because I just haven't felt the need either. I've used it on occasion, just like something, like if I'm not feeling like I am, tuned in, but otherwise I just kind of like let it go for now. Yeah. But that's the thing, like it can have it, and that's the important part too, is like it doesn't need to be the same rigid practice, right? Like it can change as you go. Like yoga, like one thing one day is not the same the next. That's the main thing that I've learned in my minimal amount of trying it. So
no, but that's exactly what you're saying, is like it's an evolution, and you start off with one thing and then you move to the next, and it's even like, I don't even know, I always compare it like healthy eating. Like you don't go from 0 to hero. You start like simple swaps, or like, okay, like I'll swap my milk for oat milk, whatever. You
Yeah.
don't go from there to vegan right away, like necessarily. Like you can if you want to, but like it's small incremental changes, and like you find what works. You're like, oh, that did not feel good. This felt
Yeah.
amazing. I love this. This tasted disgusting. Like, delicious, you know,
Yeah.
like so it's like I call it like a concoction. Like it's just like a recipe for your own wellness, right?
Yeah.
Like in just whole practice. It's just like a mind, body, spirit whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep,
yeah.
I love that. And that's the part back to like the get full circle here
Yeah.
about building up a sustainable practice overall is
Yeah.
exactly that, is like feeling into it and allowing
Mhm.
it to change and evolve. And
Yeah.
I think also like a big thing that's come up for me a lot is being able to be okay with the fact that sometimes what's right for you now isn't what you maybe ideally want it to be, but it also is not necessarily the same as for everyone else. Like when you mentioned vegan, like
Mhm.
I have health issues and like I've done, it doesn't work for me anymore. And
Yeah.
I have to recognize that and do what keeps me healthy. And
Yeah.
there's an ideal, but if it's not working right now, like I can't force it. And
And
that's
that's
hard
not
too.
your ideal then, right?
Yeah.
Like that isn't ideal
Yeah.
for you, right?
Yeah.
And we're all so different. Like we're
Yeah.
all, and like there's benefit to some of us being vegan, some of us being vegetarian, some of us being meat eater, like whatever, you know, like it is what
Totally.
it is. And it's that understanding and compassion that every single human on this earth is, I mean, we're all connected, but we're all different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And that compassion for ourselves. So important
Exactly.
as we figure it all out, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like not beating ourselves up and feeling guilt and shame about like
Hmm.
falling off the wagon or like, you know, getting off track or like dropping a tool that you've been using forever and moving to a different one or like completely letting go of it, you know. And sometimes like I'll go from, you know, being in a really great practice or great like consistency and ritual and
Hmm.
you know, pattern, and then I'll just drop it all and like be human, like, and step into that like almost like unwoke world, and I'm like, oh, this is also fun too, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's been big for me, like with the records reading as I get more into
Mhm.
it, is like it was recommended to go in like every day for 15 minutes for 15
Mhm.
days and then do 30 minutes for 15 days and 45 for 15 days. And I
Mhm.
tried, but I legitimately would go in and basically the message would be like, why are you here again? Like you don't need to be here today. So I was like, fine, I'll wait a bit. And
Okay,
so like
yeah.
every week seems to be good. This weekend I've decided to try a little bit more because I think I could benefit from the energy of it right now, just like sitting in the energy.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like if that doesn't, like there's nothing that says I have to stick to that exact,
No,
it's a suggestion, right?
exactly.
It's like it reminds me of like Jack Sparrow. Was that him when he's like they're more just guidelines anyway? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's like you take the guidelines. There's certain things you want to respect in terms of
Yes.
respecting the practice itself and like, maintaining a certain kind of
Integrity and
status quo. And yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But then from there, you can kind of get a bit more creative with it. Like, traditionally people probably maybe didn't, I don't know, do a card pull while in their Akashic records, but like those
Right.
things can go okay together. There's other practices you don't mix it with, like, and,
Yeah.
and figuring that out. But also just,
Well,
yeah.
and like even in like tuning in and like tapping into your own guides, like they're guiding you to do things
Mhm.
because that's the way in which they can disseminate a message, right?
Yeah.
So if for you that's what works, and they're like, yes, please go in and like go
Mhm.
into your records and pull a card because this is the way we're going to guide you.
Yeah.
And like that's beautiful, right? And then some people it's like a hard no, and it's like a just card pulling or just Akashic records or just through swimming. I don't know. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just
Totally.
so different. And it doesn't matter how, like the how doesn't necessarily always matter,
Mhm.
with respect, of course, like in terms of like we said, tradition and history and integrity. But it's like there's a saying, because I took communication in university, it's like the medium isn't always the message, like just
Mhm.
the message, right? Like
Yeah.
how you get it is that's it.
I love that. Yes.
Hmm.
That's perfect. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for all of this
You're welcome.
conversation. This has been really
Yeah.
fun. And
Good.
as always, and like we always cover so much more than like whatever,
Oh
but I
yeah.
love that we kind of just came in tabula rasa and just like went for it.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that.
yeah. Are you feeling good? Is there any kind of parting words of wisdom you feel like leaving on the table? Anything that feels undone or?
Yeah, I think just done is better than perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and like not to get caught up in anything, like anything, not just, spirituality, whatever, but just taking that like leap of faith and starting super small, like something that feels really good for you, and whatever you're drawn to, there's like a message in that, you're drawn to something for a reason. So explore it, don't be afraid of it. And like, even though I'm afraid of spirits so sometimes, but like now that we've had this conversation, I will be much more open. um but I just, yeah, like I think done is always better than perfect.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you
I
for
really
having
appreciate it.
me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.